Welcome to this panel discussion with four experts on environmental issues in the very broad sense. My name is Alon, and our project is called Trimum, and Trimum has been for the past 7 years or so mostly a music project that talks solely about interreligious and intercultural issues. And we decided that as an intercultural and interreligious project that we want to expand the issues that we talk about, and decided to start a new project called Music and Climate, which deals with environmental issues. And as Trimum always works, we as a music project aren't just musicians who sort of think the same and just go out and write pieces or songs or whatever about a certain subject. We try to do a lot of research first with specialists in the field that we want to deal with. And based on that research, we then try and actually develop all sorts of musical formats. So I'm really happy to have you all here. And I would like you all to first just introduce yourselves. I just thought it would be easier just in general today if we just went alphabetically. So the first one would be Mohammad. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell something about yourself shortly?
Good morning, Alon. Good morning, Frank. Good morning, Bendix. For you, Arian, good afternoon. I think you have like 5 p.m. like now. So thank you, Alon, for the organization and invitation. My name is Mohammad. I am from Tunisia. I live here in Germany since 2013, and I came for studying renewable energies. After that, I make my master's in energy economy and energy systems. And now I started working in the consulting topics for companies in the energy. So yeah, I'm a musician as well. I play oud, this kind of oriental lute, the guitar, but a big one. And I'm in the Trimum projects as well.
Thank you. The next on our list would be Franca.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Franca, and I'm studying my master in pluralist economics, and my focus is on degrowth. So how can we build up an economic system which is not based on growth anymore, and which doesn't have to grow also. And yeah, I'm very interested in how music can help to transition to this kind of economic system.
Bendix.
Yeah, hi, my name is Bendix Vogel. I'm a climate scientist or climate physicist, and at the moment I'm studying transformation studies, which is, well, takes on a rather sociological perspective on changing societies. I'm a musician as well, and as a musician and also as a scientist, kind of, I'm part of the new project Music and Climate, which has been initiated by Trimum as well. And I'm happy to be part of this discussion today.
Thank you. Last but not least.
Hello, my name is Arian. I am Alon's big sister. Very happy to be with all of you from Australia. Like Mohammad said, this is the end of the day here for me. I'm an ecologist, an interdisciplinary researcher as well. I'm interested in the ethical foundations of conservation biology and how our values drive our science and how we understand both ourselves, humanity, the place of humanity in the world, and how we think about the processes that are happening in the world, particularly in relation to human activity.
Thank you. Now I'd like you to just be a little bit more specific. Can you just tell us very shortly, each of you, what are you working on specifically right now? What are your projects at the moment? Again, starting with Mohammad.
So, the past time I was making my master thesis, and it was about seasonal storage for heat, like how to store the heat through the seasons, because we know with the renewable energies we have more sun or more heat in the summer, but we need this heat in the winter, so we have to store it in the summer and get it in the winter, and that's about the 100% of renewable energies production of what we need from electricity and heat. That's, yeah, this the conclusion. Like now I'm working with the electricity provider, and I make the consulting for them how to provide us with a cheap electricity. So how to make the prices and to get cheap electricity and efficient one. Yeah.
Thank you. Franca, what are you doing at the moment?
I'm basically working in two projects now. The first one is about an organization or funding, more or less, foundation it's called, yeah. And they want to transition into an organization which also doesn't have to grow anymore and is radically sustainable in social and environmental and financial terms. And I'm supporting them with ideas and how to do this transition. And the second project is I'm working with 3 villages in Rhineland-Pfalz. I don't know how to say it in English. And they want to become future villages, they call themselves, and they also want to go to such a transition process and become sustainable in ecological and social terms. And the goal is more or less to have a circular economy built up in these villages with also regional currency and farming and all kind of ideas. Yeah. And these projects are starting right now, and also I'm contributing to the Music and Climate project. Yep, that's it.
Just one short follow-up question. Does your team also have climate engineers like Mohammad, or is it a purely social economic project?
I didn't meet all the people yet. As far as I know, they are mostly from social science, and I'm the only economist, so they don't have economists. So it's mostly social science and also pedagogy. Yeah, but I don't know actually at first.
Bendix.
Yeah, I've just started to work in a relatively new research project, which is about energy sufficiency, or the strategy of sufficiency in the so-called Energiewende, so the transition of the German energy system. And that's also the project I will write my master thesis in or for. And well, besides, I'm in a handful of projects, more or less engaged, and yeah, maybe just that.
I have the advantage of knowing you a little bit. I also know that you're a choir conductor. Can you tell me a little bit about that in the north of Germany?
Yes, a couple of years ago, I started to work with kind of spontaneous choirs, or not spontaneous, but they are not choirs for people who come there every week and who are fixed members of the choir, but it's like open choir evenings. So I try to encourage people who are not very experienced with singing. I try to encourage them to sing in a group, and that's something I started 3 years ago, I think, and that's a big project, or not a big project, but it's a project I like a lot. And I've also once or twice tried to kind of combine my climate and social change activism with those choir activities or music activities.
Thank you. And now the person I know the best in the panel, Arian, what are you doing at this moment?
I'm broadly working on developing the field called compassionate conservation. It's an approach to conservation that it makes certain ethical commitments to non-human sentient beings. I'm interested in what conservation would be like if we, human society, considered ourselves to be an animal amongst animals, as having ethical relationships with the more than human world, so with other animals and with plants and ecosystems that are founded on compassion for others, including non-human others.
Thank you. Now is a question that I sort of, you can answer in any kind of order that you want. I was sort of surprised to discover that there are so many approaches of looking at this question, this environmental question, very, very broadly. Please don't take my vocabulary too seriously, but there are definitely, it felt like many different approaches. And my question to you all is, are you used to having discussions like these with people from these different fields within the broader field, or is it something relatively rare? What has been your experience till now?
Maybe I can start
I can
answering.
say for.
Oh. Yeah,
I'll just say that I've certainly benefited a great deal from working in an interdisciplinary space. That doesn't mean that I've worked with every possible discipline that's involved in the environmental project. We can put it that way. I haven't had an opportunity, for example, to work with economists and engineers, and but I have worked with social scientists and with ethicists and philosophers, and with paleontologists and evolutionary biologists. And certainly there's a great deal of approaches that depend and worldviews on the big question of how we wish to be in this world, and what kind of relationship we want to have in this world, and what kind of future we want for ourselves and the world. And a lot of different, very much depending on people's background. So it's a very diverse community, absolutely.
Okay, you're gonna.
Yeah, I'm having a lot of discussions actually, especially with people like Mohammad, which believe or work on technological solutions to combat the climate issue. And also with economists, because there are also a lot of economists who are not really into environmental or feminist or whatever name it issues, which are not in like mathematically proven, let's say. So yeah, I'm having a lot of discussions.
And can I ask you how they've been? Have they been fruitful in your opinion, or have they been more stagnant and difficult?
I can't. It's not possible to generalize it. I mean, it really depends on the person. It also depends on the relationship I have with this person. Like if it's a friend or a friend of a friend, most of the times they're at least willing to open their minds to the new perspective. But if it's like on let's say public debate or something, then most of the people won't react to it or just defend themselves. But I think I did achieve in some people's minds at least that they think about it and question also this very much focused, this like really harsh focus we have in Germany that we can solve everything with a technology. And yeah, so I think it's good to discuss in any way. No.
Yeah, Bendix, Mohammad?
Yeah, I think for me it was a very common topic since in the last 7 years during my studies, and it start like always, why did you choose this kind of studies, or why are you studying it in Germany and not in Tunisia, and why did you choose this kind of project for your thesis? So I had a lot of discussion about the climate topic or energy transitions, this kind of German Energiewende. But it was always, or the whole time, with a colleague about the technologies and how to do this energy transition with our technologies. And this was yesterday and will be today as well very interesting to hear how Bendix, for example, is saying from the other perspective. Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting. Maybe that sort of cements the criticism that I also sort of heard that that almost all the energy going into this. Sorry, Arian, you used I think a good term, environmental space. Was that the word the term you used? Really goes almost exclusively into new technologies. So it's maybe the fact that you've had mostly the chance to talk with other engineers and scientists maybe is a symptom of that. Bendix, what has been your experience? Have you done a lot of, I mean, you yourself are in a way interdisciplinary within yourself because you're a social scientist and a physicist. What's been your experience?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I come from this rather natural physical science background and now have really gone strongly into the social science direction. So I think I can quite well connect with both approaches, but well, there's a reason why I went into this direction. So that is because I think the physical science alone is well, kind of failing to produce the answers or even to pose the right questions that have to be posed and answered. But the master's program I'm in right now is an interdisciplinary one. So my study mates are very, like, there are really diverse backgrounds, but still I would say we're a kind of homogeneous community. There are different mindsets sometimes, but like it's not kind of projecting the diversity of the general debate. But yeah, I mean, apart from that, it feels like a one-way discussion I always have, because like from the public discourse, I always get this technological focus, and within myself, I kind of argument back from a different perspective, but that's like, there's no real discussion. So yeah, it's kind of, I think it's not an everyday situation to have this discussion, and I think it's really good to have it.
Okay, thank you. The next question is maybe very hard to do, but I think it's still important for people who are listening to sort of understand the basic scientific, ethical, philosophical, sociological idea from which you're sort of doing what you're doing. Do you understand my question? What is the philosophy behind your approach of dealing with this environmental project? I'm going to start with you, Mohammad. Can you, and it has to just a really short answer if that's at all possible, but so that people understand where this is all coming from. So, Mohammad, maybe you can start.
Yes. So of course, we have, as an engineer, some ethical part. So we are here not to destroy the environment. We like to protect the environment with our solutions. Yeah. So about the energy transition, or how to not to produce a lot of CO2 emissions, is to find the technology solutions for it, and not to stop our comfortable life or our consumption.
Thank you. Franca, what is your underlying philosophy behind what you do?
I think it's equality in many senses, because as the world or the system we are having right now is based on many inequalities. It goes from global south to global north. It also goes in the German society that we have like a lot of inequality between all kinds of genders. There's a lot of inequality between people of different skin color or whatever you name it. And so the approach I'm working on tries to analyze all of these dimensions where we have inequality in our system nowadays, and tries to propose an alternative in which we could have a system which at least thinks about all these dimensions. I mean, you can never tell if it comes true that we actually solve it, but at least the minds are very much focused on that, and there's a huge awareness about these topics. And so, yeah, I think it's really about equality.
I'm going to have to ask a follow-up question. I mean, most listeners are going to, not most, but maybe some, when they hear the word equality and economist, they say communist. What is your answer to that sort of reflex?
Mm-hmm. I think I have a few. I mean, it's quite common that people ask me, okay, you don't want to have a capitalist system, so you're a communist, because that's the only alternative system we know, because it existed in some days. But if we actually look at the historical communist system, it was quite capitalist in its core. I think the theory was, like the way they did it in practice was actually not how the theory meant it. So I'm somehow trying to differentiate between the real existing communist systems, which I strongly oppose and which I really don't appreciate and don't support in any sense, and the theory, which has a lot of nice ideas but also doesn't go too deep, because for example doesn't really think about environmental issues or gender issues. So I take some parts of it and I think it might be helpful, as other economic theories, there are so many, and so I take some parts of it, and but it's not like I'm a communist, not at all. I would not define myself as it, yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. That was really interesting. Bendix.
I just want to add to that point that always reminds me a bit of this binary view of communism and capitalism. Reminds me of a scene in Blues Brothers where there's a gathering of musicians, and then one of the Blues Brothers band asks someone else what kind of music they make, and the answer is all. And then there's another question. What do you mean by all? Yeah, all, country and Western. So, yeah. Regarding the question, I can relate to Mohammad and Franca in the sense that I think my main philosophical motivation is human-centered. So it's, yeah, and you can call it empathy or I don't know. So I can really connect with what Franca said. So equality or the inequalities we have in today's world is something that really motivates me to engage for change. I think apart from that, there's a slightly smaller motivation or fraction within my philosophical background that I think there's a worth in nature of its own. Like it's not just for serving humans to thrive, but it's also like there's something beyond humanity.
I think I hope I'm using this term correctly, but I learned it from my sister. Intrinsic value. Is that okay, Arian? That was great because now. You say your focus is human. Arian, you come next. Where's your focus? I think it'll be a bit different.
It may be slightly different. Although when Bendix was talking about empathy for human beings and recognition of the intrinsic value of the living world. I certainly share that, and I share Mohammad's commitment to the value of innovation that takes into account the effects of that innovation, and with Franca's interest in promoting equality, equality of opportunity and well-being, and concern around patriarchy and problems around gender and racism and so on. I think all of those things can be described and expanded around what I kind of think of as our moral world. Who do we count as a member of our moral world? And generally, philosophers, and certainly I do, feel that we should all be working, and it's work, it doesn't just come automatically, but we should all be working to make our moral world as big as we can, and then a bit bigger, and then a bit bigger. And the wider our moral world is, the more kinds of beings are joined into our world. And when someone is inside our moral world, it means that we have a certain commitment to treat them exactly we're using the word intrinsic value. So when someone is inside our moral world, we cannot treat them as means to an end, simply. That is, but it cannot be an instrument for our end. So for example, Muhammad, you might invent a really cool, I don't know, what I would like you to invent for me is like a really good battery, okay? So the battery has instrumental value for creating power, storing power. And Muhammad has instrumental value as a creator of a really good battery, but Muhammad also has intrinsic value as a human being, and I could never use Muhammad as a means to my end, which is invent a really good battery, right? So we we're 5 people here on the screen. Each one of us has intrinsic value. We also have some instrumental value in generating good ideas, and I could, and Alon, you have instrumental value also as a great musician, and the issue that I'm interested in raising is bringing in not only human beings from other races, for example, or other genders or other parts of the world into our moral circle, but also other beings that are not humans. They're also part of our moral circle, and we do that already. Our dogs and our cats that we live with are often parts of our family. People can form very close relationships with the trees and the areas where they live. And the wider that circle is, the more we're essentially living in a world that is full of moral subjects, is the term, rather than objects that we can use. And at the moment we treat other beings, even as environmentalists and conservationists will do this, we'll treat other beings as a means to another end. So for example, we might choose to reintroduce a particular species into an area where they became extinct due to certain human activities, but we never consider whether the individuals that we are moving from place A to place B would want to be moved in such a way. I myself was part of a reintroduction program, and I never asked at the time, do those sentient beings, these are creatures that have lives that they care about, that have intrinsic value just as I do, would they volunteer? If I was in their place, would I volunteer to be taken or put in zoos and bred for bred in captivity to save? My dog just had a fight. Bred in captivity and used for some fantasy that humans may have about how we want nature to be. And so it's not just be gentle. It's not just capitalism, right? The capitalism that will use animals and other beings in ways that goes against their interests. It's also for the good of the world and for the good of nature. We will often do things that doesn't take into account the interests of other beings.
So what Bendix was saying, that he somehow intuitively feels that the world has intrinsic value, you've sort of taken that intuitive feeling that Bendix had and sort of made it to an important part of your profession. Can I ask you all for a short, if you have any, a short response to what you just heard from the others, starting with Muhammad, just if you have any sorts of thoughts that came up to in your mind when now you heard the other three.
Actually not. I think it's just another art of thinking about this topic, and it's good that we not all of us think in the same way. There's there is the opposite idea, let's say. So this will complete. Maybe if all of us think like me, like we have to be innovate, we have to build machine, we have to build a robot, we have to build cars, maybe it's not good for the nature, and we need someone who stop us, or not to stop us, but let us thinking in the other direction, in the other way about it before we build it, and so we can build it more efficient, more with a better resource, and with recycled resources.
Thank you. Franca.
I will stop you, don't worry. No, I'm joking. No, what I really liked about Bendix was like this very much intrinsic feeling that something is like, that's the way I understood it, and I have the same, like that there's something going really wrong and there needs to be a change. Like it's just like so much inside of me that I just can't behave otherwise. And what I really liked about Arian is this idea to, at least the way I understood it, transition objects into subjects, because I think that's a very nice idea also, because I think in Germany many people see even other humans in other parts of the world more as objects, and if it comes to nature, which we are actually part of, but then they are also, like, most of the things are becoming objects which you just can use, and that's also a nice idea I really liked. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to just say a little thing about what you just said, Franca. This idea that other humans are objects. That is maybe in a way of looking at what Trimum has been doing for the past 7 years, or maybe any other intercultural kind of musical project. But what we really try to do is sort of take away these terms like Muslims, or refugees, or Jews, or whatever, and by bringing people together, they stop being refugees, for instance, they become Omid. So I can very much relate to what both of you said, but especially Franca, this idea that we do this within the human world, and that's definitely something that Trimum has now tried to fight against for a long time. Bendix.
Yeah, I think what I liked about Arian's approach or view was the idea of moral circles, kind of, that we, as a goal, or as an ideal, should enlarge ever more, because I think I can really, or I could go along with that in saying there's a kind of a priority starting where we are and starting to look at human societies. And I mean, nowadays the moral circles of many people in the world are quite small and end at national borders, or even smaller. And so I think the first priority or first step would be to make the moral circles fit all human beings inside, and if possible, not only human beings living today, but also those living tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. But yeah, of course, then, but as you said, I mean, it's a bit, I mean, there are, of course, many people who have a moral circle today that kind of includes people of their own, their alike, but also their dog and their cat. So they also have kind of but it's a very selective inclusion for a narrow group of animals and a narrow group of human beings. So yeah, I can connect with that. Yeah.
Thank you. Arian, what do you say to our panel?
I'd like to riff off of what you just said about having a small moral world, whoever gets to be in it, right? There's a good reason to have a small moral world. It's very comfortable. So like I'm going to advertise small moral world for a moment. It's very comfortable to have a small moral world, because what happens when you grow your moral world, which is what I think we should all be doing, but it's a hard thing to do. And the reason why it's even an unpleasant thing to do, because the bigger our moral world, the more we have clashing interests, the more we get into situations where we notice that the interest of this person and that person don't necessarily align. And no matter what we do, we are always, it's part of being alive, we are always going to be harming some entities in our moral world. There's no way around it. When we build our homes, like even this house that we've built here, that we've been very careful about using wood that has died. Well, there would have been some possum that lived in a branch of the wood that we used. So like there is none of us are going to get out of this world alive without blood on our hands. The only question is whether, or some harm, that's, you know, a kind of word to say, we are always going to be complicit in harming others. We're always going to be making decisions that are going to, if we have a wide moral world, we're going to see that every time we go to the supermarket, and more people are experiencing now, do I buy this organic rice, or do I buy this one from this part of the world? But what are the labor practices there, and what are the agricultural practices there? We're constantly grappling with these, what is called moral dilemmas. If we have really small moral worlds, we don't have that problem, because we can just go about our days and say that, oh, well, if I want to build this house, I'm going to cut down that tree. And if that tree is not part of my moral world, I'm not going to suffer when I cut down that tree. Now, if I have a wide moral world, I may still cut down that tree, but it will break my heart when I'm cutting down that tree. I will experience pain when I'm cutting down that tree. And I might try to then find another way to build my house. But even then, I'm going to encounter pain. And one of the insights that I've certainly learned from my colleagues who are wonderful philosophers and ethicists is that it is important that we learn to accept a certain amount of grief and pain as just part of being alive, and that it's not comfortable, but it's okay. It's part of maturing as a human being. It's part of growing as society. Many cultures, for example, hunting-based cultures, certainly saw that the animals that they hunted were their kin, and they experienced pain, and they would apologize for harming these others that are part of their moral world. Didn't stop them from harming them, though, because that is part of being alive.
Thank you. I'm going to go now a little bit into our theme, which is music. And for that, I would like to ask you what your musical backgrounds are, each and every one of you. And again, starting with Mohammad, what is your background in music?
Yes, so I'm playing, like say, the oud since more than 15 years, and in Tunisia I get a diploma in Oriental musics and maqams. I worked with some bands as in Tunisia, as well in here in Germany, in the world music. And I started since 1 year with Dream, who this kind of organization who looks for not only the music for concerts and to make music, but for me it's like a philosophy of music or a combination between music and society. And
Thank
I'm
you.
a teacher as well. I forget it. I'm a teacher of music here in Germany. I did it just for money during my study time. Yes.
And we're very, it's as Mohammad said, you're with us for a year, and we are very, very, very happy to have you on our team. Franca, what is your musical background?
I think my musical background is more, comparing to you guys, probably more passive, because I'm not actively playing an instrument right now. Nevertheless, music plays a really huge part in my life. Like the first time I went to a dance party, like electronic music is my passion, I have to admit. And the first time I went to a dance party, I don't know, I was maybe 14 or something. And since that day, I really, really love to go dancing and go like to really, really good electronic music parties, and that's what I really miss during this Corona crisis. Also, it's a huge part of my life, and I'm also defending this kind of attitude that electronic music is no music, because I feel that it is present in some circles. I don't know if it's what it is in Trimum. I could imagine maybe that it's also some people think of like that, because I think it's also an art. It's very different than it's instrumental music, but I do think it's an art, and I really like to experience with sounds and and how it works, and that's mostly my musical background.
Yeah, I always keep having to ask you follow-up questions, but I did pick up the when you said I'm not playing a musical instrument at the moment, and I sort of focused on that at the moment. Does that mean that you once played a musical instrument?
Yeah, I played guitar for a really long time, and right now I wanted to start exploring I don't know how it's called in English, unfortunately, accordion.
Accordion, that's fine.
Yeah, that's the same word, yeah. Because I just found one in my grandparents' home, and it's just there, and I started touching it, and I felt some kind of connection. So I'm gonna get it and gonna, start listening to it. Yeah.
So I'm definitely writing this down for the future. Bendix, what about you?
What a pity that your grandparents didn't have a synthesizer. Synthesizer. I was kind of quite privileged in that sense, because I got a lot of musical lessons, like private music lessons, as a child and as a teenager. So I learned to play the piano and the drums, and then I also started to play in bands and did that for a really long time in different bands. And I always liked to sing, but I was quite afraid of it and easily ashamed of singing. And and then I also took singing lessons, and so which brought me into the situation of now being able to conduct choir evenings. So and actually, to be honest, I sometimes have my issues with electronic music.
Yeah, that's for another panel. Arian, tell me about you.
I play the Celtic harp. It's one thing it has a very special place in my life as something that I do for, we'll go back to that word, for its own intrinsic value. I play the harp purely for the pleasure of the feeling, the sensation of playing. I'm not trying to get better at it. It's not something that I'm practicing with any particular goal beyond that moment of playing. When I have that opportunity, it's just its own thing.
Alon, you're muted.
Yeah. So I was wondering,
sorry.
I wanted to ask you, where you can see...
I think Bendix just wanted to say something, Alon.
Excuse me.
I think that was such a beautiful degrowth statement, because it's a very special statement actually in our culture to say, I'm not trying to get better at it. It's just perfectly fine the way it is, and I'm enjoying it just for the feeling and for the moment. It's, yeah.
So I'm going to go back to my question. I wanted to ask you, as we as Trimum want to bring these two worlds together, music and I'm still going to use the environmental field, I wanted to know if you have any ideas how we could go about doing that. And I'd like to start with the answer no. That it's just not possible, or you don't see how, because I spoke to Muhammad the last months, and I always felt that Muhammad, maybe in the panel, maybe the one who has the most intense musical life, I'd say, you were the one who always showed a bit of skepticism when it comes to bringing these two worlds together. Can you a bit elaborate on that?
Yes, for me, like you said, the environmental field, it has always a relationship with me, with the industry, or with the household, or with politics. So I can relate it with this topics, like I said. But as you and Bernhard Koenig came the first time for me and said, we'd like to make a project with climate or environmental field with music, I was like kind of surprised. Okay, my God, what this both things have to do together. And I know that, and you like it to make it in Trimum, and Trimum is this intercultural and
religious.
The three religions together. So, like I said, this environmental field, I think to have the first priority to think about our industry and or our household, and about the music. Of course, there is a music business. So, like the artists, when they go to another city or to another country to make their concert, they take the planes or they drive cars, and there is CO2 emission, or for streaming songs on YouTube or Spotify or what else, or just our call now. Maybe it's not that much efficiency, but still, like Bernhard say one time in our teams, he said like the music business make only 0.08% of this kind of CO2 emissions. And yeah, I don't know how you mean. So the music, it's not contribute a lot of CO2 emissions. For me, this is the first point. And if they make, I mean, the music business make 50% of CO2 emissions, should be not the work of musicians. For me, as a musician, I cannot work on it. It should like be the work of engineer or something else to make technological solutions to reduce this kind of CO2 emissions. And not me, I'm a musician or a wood player or a guitar player, accordion player or whatever. This is the first thing. The second thing, maybe with a songwriter or to make songs who speak about the climate or to speak about the environmental. I think this kind of songs should not come directly to people with the pop music. They the pop music have always other topics. They have topics of more related topics to life, about love and other things. And if we make this kind of songs, I'm not sure if it comes 100% to people, or maybe it's a very complicated topic for people in one song.
Thank you for that. Bendix, I know that you already have quite a bit of experience. What would you answer, Mohammad, when you hear these things?
Yeah, I think I have a passionately different view on that. So maybe starting with the last thing you said, that pop music is more about issues of life. I mean, climate is, what is it? It's a very big issue of life, I think, in some kind of way. But I mean, I see your point. It's not so easy to write poetic songs about kind of complicated topics like climate change and societal transformation. It's not so easy, and one can't force it, I think. But I think what is more important is that I think it plays a really big role that we're culturally programmed to growth and culturally programmed to a lot of problematic views about the world. For example, the assumption, the very deeply rooted assumption that the world is basically there for us humans to take it and to feed from it and to grow from it or to harvest from it. So, and I mean, music is culture, part of culture, and as such, it can play a very important role, I think, in raising questions about our mindsets, about what are we actually like, what are actually our deeper assumptions or philosophies, if you want. And I think Bernhard also wrote a really nice article about that. So in that article, he is writing something about the emissions of the music industry itself and the music consumption, but then also about the role that music plays in a cultural sense, like in the sense of what can it contribute to a change of mindsets and yeah. So I would actually say music can be really, really helpful in that.
Thank you. Arian, we also spoke often about Trimum. You're very, I think you are the person who has experienced Trimum online more than anyone else in the world. I'm just going to go out and say that. One of the only people, for instance, who watched our Fugato concert from beginning to end and really put in a lot of energy and time into our projects, which I really appreciate. But I also sort of remember, or maybe we alluded to that a bit earlier, that you sort of made a bit of a parallel between what we do and what you do. This just general goal of compassion in a way. So I was wondering, now that you know Klima quite well as an intercultural and interreligious project, do you have any sort of idea or anything that pops up to mind now, how you would, in very, very general terms, is there anything that you can think of that we could do as a music project to sort of promote the ideas that I think we all agree with?
It's a very, very interesting question, and I can just share some thoughts that came to me as I was listening to everyone, and I think I'm kind of riffing off Muhammad was talking about singing about love. We sing about love a lot, and I think that that's actually exactly what we should be making music about. That music is about love. It's just that there's a lot of different kinds of love. It's true that the music industry tends to focus a lot on love between human beings, and particularly heterosexual love. There's not a lot of LGBT love songs, for example, and I think it's extremely powerful to have more of that. And I think it's extremely powerful to have love stories about the more than human, love songs about dogs. I remember once when I was very sad when I lost my dog, and Alon, you sent me an Israeli song about a lost dog, and that was, very, very special to me. I think music can inspire us to love. It can inspire us to understand. It can tell stories. Music, to a large extent, is a storytelling venue, a storytelling space, and I think it can. I think in its best, it can inspire us to who it is that we want to be. How do we want to treat others, and how do we understand others? How do we imagine being in someone else's shoes, or someone else's hooves, or someone else's paws, or someone else's feathers? Actually, a king parrot has just landed above, and is
we have enough time. We have enough time for you to show us that king parrot.
He's a bit hard. He'll be hard to see in the dark.
Okay.
He's just. I'll see if I can try. It's a bit hard.
Never mind.
No, it's a bit tricky.
Okay.
And I think actually music could not just represent some key, motivations of the environmental movement. I think you can actually educate and inform and enrich the environmental movement that can become quite stuck just thinking about human beings as awful creatures, as the destroyers of the world. But if you were to ask that king parrot what he thought about human beings, he would think, I think, that human beings are really cool. And he may have a lot of good things to say. He may love human beings. So I think music could maybe do that too.
Thank you. Franca, what are your thoughts? You said in the very beginning of the conversation that this is a topic that interests you, and you have such a passion for music. What have been your thoughts?
My first thought was when Mohammed, when about your statement, because you said that the music industry only produces this and this much CO2, and that it's not really, it doesn't make a difference, let's say. And I think this is actually quite a technical mindset also, to just look at the CO2 emissions, because you can somehow count it also. And but I'm a little bit criticizing this, because I think it's not really good to only look at the CO2. I think this is also what our political system does right now, only reducing CO2, but this doesn't really solve the whole issue of climate change. And so this is what I would like to say, that I think bringing this topic of climate into musicians' heads and minds, I think this is like the most important thing we can do, that more and more people start thinking and about this topic and being aware what is actually going on, and finding solutions for their personal lives and also for their professional lives. And I think this is, so I think this climate topic should go in any social movement and any like profession, because we can find solutions anywhere, and maybe we don't know yet how these solutions might look like, but as we are talking right now, we are trying to find out. And so I think it's just important to start thinking about it, and not only see, oh, okay, maybe in comparison to other industries, it doesn't make too much sense to reduce CO2 emissions only in the music industry. And so I think this is what all about, like awareness, and then also with awareness, the willingness to change oneself also comes along, I think. And so, yeah, I think it's about awareness, and I think it's also, I think what is really the potential in music is about what Arian said. I can really totally connect to that, like this emotional, yeah, nothing can, like, I don't know anything that can connect so many people in an emotional way as music can. And so I think this is really where the potential lies. I don't really know how to translate it yet, but I think we will find it out. But I do see a huge potential, and I'm very happy to explore it with you guys. Yeah.
Thank you for that. We're going to come to our final question, which may be a tricky one, but just give it your best shot. We spoke a lot about very complicated and intricate issues in a very, very short period of time. So I'm going to ask now a very sort of simple and poppy question, which is going to be very easy to listen to, but for you, I think is going to be the hardest of all questions. And the question is, if you all were going to write a song for our Music and Climate project, what would you call it? Mohammad. Poor Mohammad is the first one. I see Arian already closing her eyes, thinking about it, hoping to have enough time until she's on. She's last. Mohammad, you're the pro musician. You go first.
Innovation.
Innovation. Bendix. Excuse me, Franca. What's the name of your song?
Oh my God, this is really a hard question. Innovation. That's really that's so nice. Okay. The first thing that came to my mind is love, but this is so I don't know. This is really not innovative. So yeah, but I think I'm just gonna maybe I have a good idea after Arian.
All right, you go, no problem. Bendix, you got something?
Yeah, but maybe it's cheated because like that idea was in my head before we had this conversation.
Cheating is fine. Trimum is all for cheating.
Okay, so it's something like everything could be different and maybe embrace is better.
Nice. Arian, your song?
I would want to say, okay, I've got a title, and it's got to be, I think, in a kind of Western lilt. It would be something like Going Feral.
Okay. So, Franca? we need a banjo. Okay, I got it. Franca?
No, unfortunately, I didn't come up with anything nicer than.
It's not a problem. It was a trick question. It was hard, and it doesn't matter because we got lots of time to think about that question. So thank you really all for sharing your expertise and your knowledge, and for your openness, and for giving us so much of your time. And I'm really looking forward to talking to you more and exploring all this with you more deeply. There's so much more to unpack and to unravel. So thank you all very, very much. And I hope whoever is also listening to this enjoys this just as much as I did. So thank you all very, very much.
Thank you, Alon.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for coming up with
Goodbye.
this.
Yes.
Estamos